We'll just give it a few minutes. People are flooding in. So I'll wait for that to slow down a bit before we kick things off. Okay, well, we're up to nearly 50 and it's 3 minutes past, so it's probably time to kick this off. So welcome everyone. Thank you very much for joining the latest NCircle Student Mentoring Circle. This evening, we're going to be discussing the idea that no employee is an island. And this will be talking about the importance of building relationships and increasing your visibility, both at an organization that you're working in and also in the industry as a whole. My name is Saskia Bennett, and I'm delighted to be joined by two excellent industry professionals, Yvonne Yeboah, a portfolio manager at Kempen, and Shay Owode, a senior consultant at 2020 Trustees. Now, I appreciate this is a webinar, and you'll automatically be on mute, but we do want this to be as interactive as possible. So we had a couple of questions submitted before the event, which I can kick things off with, but please do use the chat function, which you'll see at the bottom of your screen, the Q&A, to submit your questions. Alternatively, you can raise your hand and I can take you off mute and you can ask your question directly, which would be great to vary the voices and to hear you, because unfortunately we can't see you today. Yeah, please see this as an opportunity to ask any questions you might have about building relationships, improving your visibility at an organization. And yeah, I think we'll kick off. So I think let's dive into the first question. So maybe we'll start with you, Yvonne. What is building a relationship? How do you see sorry, I'm fluffing this already. Why is it so important to build a relationship in the workplace?
Hi everyone, thanks for having me today. Usually behind the scenes, so it's really nice to be answering questions. In terms of relationships, I think they're one of the most important parts of every single job, or one of the things that are universal to every kind of role you do, because you're working with people and you're usually working for people and providing a service to other people. So I think it's really key that you're able to establish a link with people and a way of working so that you can get to your end goal.
Thanks very much. And Shay, what would you add anything to that?
Yeah, sure. So hi everyone, first of all, good evening. Really good to be with you this evening. I'm actually on holiday, so forgive me if I have any holiday glitches, i.e. internet technical errors, but we're good at the moment and hopefully it stays that way. But yeah, it's really good to be with you, and thanks for taking time to spend some time looking at this very important topic of building relationships and visibility as it pertains to the workplace. So the question is, why are relationships, or why is building relationships important? Well, first of all, it's just really important to I guess ascertain in our minds how powerful relationships are. If you think about organizations and what assets they have, for most organizations in the corporate world, their most valuable assets are human capital, i.e. their people. And it takes people to decide whether or not you it takes people to decide whether or not they should give you the job. So you go to interviews in front of people, they decide whether or not you have the job. It takes people to decide whether or not you get promoted. It takes people to decide your salary, how much you get paid. And yeah, I guess it also takes people to advise us on how to build knowledge, whether that's technical, commercial knowledge of our industry and or our company. And I heard a quote which really stood out to me when I was younger, and it simply said, education is a progressive revelation of your ignorance. And we all have knowledge gaps. We're all ignorant in areas. and we need people to help us access information and get support that we don't have because of our ignorance, as dumb as it sounds. And so that's why it's important to build relationships, because we need people. You guys would have got email and for this session. And one of the slogans was that no employee is an island, and it's true. We can't walk alone. We need people to help us and support us.
Thanks very much, Shay. I particularly like the definition of education being a progressive revelation of our ignorance. Certainly feel more ignorant the more I find out. So I think you touched on a couple of really key points there around the importance of building relationships. How might you distinguish between a relationship that I mean, do you see a difference between, say, someone who can stand your corner, who can speak up for you in a meeting, and somebody who can guide you through your path, and is it important guide you on your career path? And do you think it's important to have both of those sorts of relationships, the kind of cheerleader on the one hand and the mentor on the other? Maybe Yvonne, should I start with you?
Yeah, sure. So I think it's really, really important to have those two roles amongst many. So the reason I say that it's good for them to be different is where I've had a mentor in my career, the mentor sees the good and the bad, right? So they see the things about you that you want to change and can hopefully give you advice so that you can change those things. That's what I see as a mentor, somebody who can give you advice and sort of highlight things to you. Whereas the cheerleader, you want them to believe in your greatness as much as you know you have it, and or even beyond what you know you can do. And obviously that means you don't want them to be seeing all the terrible mistakes that you make constantly, unless it's where it's a position of growth, where they can say they've taken you from one stage of knowledge to another stage of knowledge. That's great because it's progression. But you want somebody, the mentor is somebody that you can sort of just go back and forth with. This is what I'm going through in my team. How do I change this? How do I move amongst this? Whereas a cheerleader, you want somebody to give you opportunities that you can rise to and show them that you are worth their support, basically. And when we say cheerleading you in a room, there are many rooms where meetings are being had where your name is mentioned that you cannot be in, be it a leadership meeting or some kind of, when I say club, it could be, a certain level of management or a certain department or something where they're meeting you won't be there. But if your name is mentioned, you want someone just to say at least, oh, I've heard of them and they're really good at this. Or I've worked with them and they're really good at X, Y, Z. And that's why you need a cheerleader and you need a mentor.
Thanks, Yvonne. Shay, did you have
anything? Sure. So just ask the question one more time, just so I make sure I answer it properly.
So it's basically whether you think it's important to have a cheerleader kind of, to make sure you've got cheerleader kinds of relationships as well as mentoring kinds of relationships.
Yeah. So both are really important. I guess if there are people on this call that have been to similar calls like this, you might have heard that the quasi cheerleader called a sponsor, and the distinction between the mentor and the sponsor. So for those of you that haven't heard, a mentor, as sort of Yvonne alluded to, is someone that advises you, whereas a sponsor is someone who acts for you, and mentor helps you navigate your career. A sponsor advocates for your career advancement. A mentor coaches you through opportunities. A sponsor creates opportunities. A mentor talks with you. A sponsor talks for you. They talk for you when you're not in the room. They can really make decisions that shift your career trajectory. And you need both, because mentors are valuable, because you need help discussing things. And as Yvonne said, you need someone who you can share the good, the bad, the ugly with. You need someone who you can be your authentic self around. And mentors are supposed to help coach you through challenges and you can express your full self to. Whereas sponsors, you need to really advocate on your behalf, and you need them to have visibility of your work and your character. And, you just need them to go into a room and fight your corner.
Thanks very much. And I guess what you've alluded to there is that when we get into the workplace, doing a good job sometimes isn't enough. You need to, in a big organization, work can be missed. You can just be, doing your day job, but unless you have a sponsor who can help, shine light on that work, it can often go unnoticed.
Sorry, Saskia, just to quickly chime in there. It goes back to your previous question on the importance of building relationships, which we touched on, so I don't want to go back over that. But because we work in environments that are controlled by people, we have to realize that our ability to progress is a function of someone's judgment. And one may think that that's unfair or that shouldn't be the case. But ultimately, it does come down to that. And judgments can be influenced by relationships, which is why we need to ensure when we're working in organizations that we have good relationships with mentors, sponsors, colleagues, people, essentially.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. Well, thank you both very much for answering those few questions. I think now we can get into some details and some specific examples. So maybe you could each in turn give me a little bit of, or give us a little bit of background to yourselves, your roles, and crucially where you first realised the importance of building relationships. Shay, let's start with you this time, please.
Yeah, so I could go all day talking about my career thus far, but what I currently do is I work for a professional, what we call a professional trustee, pensions trustee organization called 2020 Trustees. And what they do, what my organization does is, so the way I try and define it is, you know how you have corporate boards like CEOs, CFOs, a lot of companies actually have a pensions board, so a quasi corporate board and their job is to manage everything to do with pensions. Essentially what they do is they ensure that people that work for corporates get paid the right pension at the right time, and it gets paid to the right person. And there's a lot of complex decisions around investments, around business, around legal, around ESG. There's a lot of complex decision making that underpins all that. And it's my job and the job of the company I work for to help make those decisions and navigate all those complexities in order to ensure that people get paid the pensions that they were promised. So that's what I do. So to the second question about the importance of where I first realized the importance of building a corporate relationship. If I go back into my story, and maybe that covers part of the question. So kind of a bit of background on me is I grew up in a council estate in East London in a borough called Newham, which is where Stratford, I actually grew up in Stratford, which was home of the 2012 London Olympic Games. And I went to an underperforming secondary school. My mum immigrated to England before I was born, and just didn't really look into schools, so didn't know. She wanted me to go to an all-boys school. She didn't really look at the performance. So I ended up in an all-boys underperforming secondary school, growing up on a council estate. So without going into the details, you can imagine what kind of dynamics I saw during my upbringing. And after I'd done, or as I was approaching the end of my GCSEs around 2008, 2009, that's when in my sort of teenage years, that's when knife crime sort of really hit an all-time high and started getting closer to home. So a lot of my friends were, or not a lot, but some of my friends were stabbed. Fortunately, none died at that time. Some went to prison for various things. And I knew essentially I need to get out of this area if I had any chance of making something of my life. So what I did was I started looking for colleges outside of the borough that I was in, thinking if I change my environment, hopefully it would just help me in the long term. And it turned out to be a decent decision. And so I went to secondary school in an area called Upminster in Essex. And I went from a very diverse, Newham is a very diverse borough to a very sort of, dare I say, middle class, Caucasian, a very white area. And I had to assimilate to a very new environment that I wasn't used to. And I sat next to this guy in my maths class called Iffy. And Iffy was everything that I wanted to be, but I wasn't. I'd had 5 years of a very poor education. And so I wasn't extremely clever. Iffy was very clever, straight A-star student. So I really liked observing him and learning from him. And one day he was applying for an internship, or no, an insight day. So one day insight at Morgan Stanley. And I asked him, hey, Iffy, what you doing? He was on his laptop during our free period. He told me, I'm applying for this insight day, you should apply. And so he sent me the application and I did apply and I got onto it. And I went to Morgan Stanley for the day. It was the first time I'd ever been in Canary Wharf, never been there. So I'm like, well, what is this place? Buildings everywhere. And I walk into Morgan Stanley and there's a speaker and he says, all I remember from the day was, he goes, look, if you guys don't know what you want to do with your career, come and work in investment banking. It's dynamic, it's intellectually stimulating, and there are limitless opportunities for career development. I didn't know what I wanted to do, and that all sounded like it ticked the boxes of what I was looking for. So I said, I'm going to work in an investment bank, and more specifically, I'm going to work at Morgan Stanley because it was the only investment bank I knew at the time. And so I applied for a spring week there. Once I got to university, I did a 4-year sandwich course. So I had the chance to do a year in industry as part of my undergraduate degree. Applied to Morgan Stanley, got rejected. Applied for my spring week there, got rejected. Applied to do a sort of a diversity dinner for ethnic minorities, got rejected. So I had 3 rejections from Morgan Stanley. Fortunately, by then, just to fast track the story, I knew about more investment banks. So I got rejected by Morgan Stanley, but I did my internships at UBS and Nomura. But I really wanted to work at Morgan Stanley. And so when I got to my final year, I still wanted to do an internship at Morgan Stanley. So I applied and finally I got it. So I did my internship after I graduated. And because I worked at banking in the interim at these other banks, everyone kept on throwing this idea of network. And I got it, but I didn't really understand what it meant or what the power was in networking. But by the time I got to Morgan Stanley, because I'd seen a bit of corporate culture, what I did was I tried to meet as many people as I could. I went for coffees with people. I got people to introduce their network to me. And by the end of my time at Morgan Stanley, I had 3 job offers. So I felt like it was 1 job offer for each rejection that I got beforehand. And I got those through 3 ways, which I'll try and explain quickly. So one was I focused on what was in my hands. I remember when, actually, let me not go into stories of my childhood. But anyway, I focused on what was in my hand. What do I mean by that? So I went to Loughborough University. And when I was at Loughborough, I met this guy at an event who went to Loughborough, but when worked at Morgan Stanley. So when I got my internship, I reached out to him and said, I'm going to be intern at Morgan Stanley. I remember meeting you at this event. You know, I can see that he had left Morgan Stanley by this point, but I knew that he worked there. So I just wanted to get some insight from him. And he said, and what he'd done was he opened the door and introduced me to someone else that I should meet, who was his friend at Morgan Stanley. And so I went to meet and had coffee with his friend. And that guy gave me one of my 3 job offers. The other job offer was, I was in a role where I was working with various different teams within Morgan Stanley. So I was working with what we call other internal stakeholders. And what you need to understand about the world of work is people are always observing you. And even though I wasn't directly working with these other stakeholders, they were watching me and, you know, seeing how I conducted myself. And they kind of had some overview of the work I was doing because we were working together. And so one of these internal stakeholders had a lady who was leaving for maternity and wanted someone to cover her for the year that she was going to be out. So he approached me and gave me a 2nd job offer. And then I did a good job on my internship. So my internship converted into a grad job offer. So I focused on what was in my hands. I worked with a number of other internal stakeholders. So I tried not to silo myself into one thing. I worked with different people. And finally, I did a good job. And those are the 3 ways that kind of opened doors. So I think I over answered the question, but yeah.
No, that was wonderful. Thanks very much, Shay, for, I mean, I think that really demonstrates the importance of building relationships, that to have been rejected 3 times by Morgan Stanley, and then once you get there and start building those all important relationships, you end up with 3 job offers. I mean, that's pretty impressive to have 3 job offers in your hand at once. Yvonne, tell us a little bit about your background and likewise where you first realised the importance of building relationships.
Yeah, sure. So excuse me for going off video. I kind of choked on my water there. So if I help,
Okay.
hopefully I don't go back into it. So so I currently work as a portfolio manager for a company called Kempen Capital. Very much the same sort of client base as Shay, pension schemes, institutional investors. And I've been in that role for quite a short time. Prior to that, I was in transition management, which was moving around client assets, pension schemes, large pension schemes. So, 100 million up to 4 billion. And before that, I was in investment consulting, which is providing advice to pension schemes. So I've gone through providing advice, implementing that advice through transitions. And then now the role I'm doing is fiduciary management, which is so providing advice and implementing it for the client so that the client doesn't have to. So it's almost like a mesh of the two. I've been in the industry for 10 years. I studied accountancy and finance at a university in Scotland called Heriot-Watt University. And but you can hear from my accent, I am not from Scotland, although I've lived here for 15 years. I was born in London and grew up in South London mostly. So in terms of building relationships, I think it became very apparent to me how important it would be at a young age. And that was because I actually went to 9 different primary schools. The reason for that is between childcare, my mum, it's just my mum and I, so single mum. So whoever was looking after me, I'd stay at their house for that length of time and I'd go to school next to their house. And I also went to 2 different schools abroad. But as an only child, with my mum and dad, so just my mum and I, you have to build relationships to survive. You have to make friends very quickly. Every school you go to, you've gone there on your own. You don't have a sister or a sibling, like a brother to sit with at lunch. You don't have anyone to sort of be your comfort. So it was just about building relationships quickly. So what can you do? Think of something that you have in common with somebody and, just branch off that and then just make friends, make friends, make friends. So that was at a young age. And then when I reached the workplace, I sort of carried those skills across, but I didn't realize how important and how different those relationship roles were. So so making friends from my interview stage, making friends with the secretary that you meet, because I'd always heard that the person who interviews you will probably go back and speak to the secretary and say, how was that person when they came in? So I know that has to be my friend. After I get the job, I need to make friends with the secretary, because I've heard that the juniors are the ones that always have to make meeting packs and things like that last minute. And if you don't know how to use the printer, the fax machine or whatever, you're screwed. So make friends with the secretary, she'll show you. And I used to get to a stage where I knew the secretary's job, so that if she wasn't in, within reason, I would be in there to save the senior management. So what does that mean? The senior management are always looking for me and they know my name. So it was just a series of just building these relationships in some ways to survive. And I found that, I guess from day one, I realized that was important, but I didn't realize how different the relationships were. And as you mentioned previously, you've got the mentor, you've got the cheerleader. And then when I said that there are other roles that are important, it's, your co-workers, the different skills that people have, being able to leverage off that through the relationship that you have with them and how you can actually learn more in your role as well. I think those are quite key.
Thanks very much, Yvonne. I think we've had a couple of questions through live on this. I think it's quite a big topic. How do you go about building those relationships? Whether you're only meeting someone for the first time, or if you're female, if you're a woman, and you're in a room that's full of men who are talking about the latest football result, that you don't really have any, don't know about, or you're not so involved in. How best, what advice would you both give to students for how to build those kinds of relationships. Yvonne, maybe if we go to you first, because I think this picks up quite well on what you were just saying.
Yeah, sure. So that was something that I struggled with quite a bit. In one of the teams that I was in that was quite influential in my career path, everybody spoke about football all the time. They played football together. I mean, the industry that we're in, investments, is particularly male dominated. And 10 years ago, it was no different. And it was also very much white. So you'd be the only woman in the room and you'd be the only Black person in the room. You've got no idea about football. You don't know what offside rule is. I still don't know. I just know that loads of people don't know what that is. And it was a challenge. I'd like stay in the corner. That was my bit. I wouldn't engage in conversation. Then when I moved it to another role, everybody loved cricket and they knew the names of all the cricket players and everything like that. And I had no clue. So what did I do? I just told them, I've got no idea what you guys are talking about. Teach me. You know, it's like getting comfortable with being uncomfortable. I didn't try to fake it. I didn't go into a corner. I just said, what are you guys talking about? Why do you like cricket so much? What's so interesting about it? Why are you not all about football like everyone else? And then that got people talking. And then I was taken to a cricket game as well by my colleagues so that they could teach me some of the chants and they could show me what happens there and why they love it so much and that type of thing. And all I did was I was honest. And I said, and I gave them room as well to be themselves about it. So it wasn't like I hate football or I hate rugby, I'm not interested. It was sort of like, why do you like this so much? Tell me and I'll listen to you.
Brilliant. So kind of bringing some humanity, and you know, I guess it's almost like if you were, I don't have brothers and sisters either, but you know, if your brothers or brothers' friends are talking about football and you know they're laughing next to you and you kind of go up to them and say, what's going on? Tell me about it. I guess it's trying to cross that bridge between, you know, when it comes to building relationships, trying to be your true self, being the person you are outside of work, and remembering that everyone is human. Shay, how about you? Any tips you'd give for building relationships? And also maybe how would you feel, maybe from a male point of view, if you're chatting about the last rugby score or rugby result and Yvonne or I came up and said, what's going on?
Yeah, so look, to build relationships, you have to talk to people. We can go into various schools of thought or talk about various ways what you talk about, but to summarize, what I found is there are three things that people love to talk about. They love to talk about their careers, what they do, how they've got there. They love to talk about their families, how many kids they have, what they're up to this weekend with their families, and they like to talk about their hobbies, so what they do outside work, if that's watch cricket or anything else. And what you want to do, and what kind of Yvonne demonstrated, was you want to be inquisitive. You want to have a genuine interest in people, their lives, and be inquisitive about what they do. And it will typically fall into those three areas. If not, I'm sure you guys will even think of other areas. But yeah, you just want to ask people questions. You want to talk to people, and just remember that, you know, this can be intimidating when you're trying to build relationships. But you said it, Saskia, appeal to people's humanity. Everyone is human, and yeah, all you can do is be yourself. So I love what Yvonne said. Like, I don't know cricket, but she demonstrated something. She was inquisitive to ask, and she just said, "Look, I don't know, but tell me." So yeah, she demonstrated talking to people, which you need to do. But if you be yourself, so if you don't know something, don't try and act like you know it. Yeah, if someone came up to, I don't watch rugby, and a lot of people do, and again, I'll just say I don't watch it, or what I do know, I'll try and find a connection between what they're talking about, and you know, we can go into, it might not be relevant to say this, but I worked with a guy who, so my first boss at UBS, his brother was a professional rugby player for Scotland. So I might just throw that in. I don't watch rugby, but I work with a cool guy whose brother is a professional rugby player, and this is his name. If you watch rugby and you like Scotland, so it's finding links of, I don't know what you're talking about, but I know something that links to what you're talking about, and that's just a way to keep the conversation going. But look, if you don't know something, and you know what, for women, what I will say is, it's a lot harder when you're in male-dominated industries where people talk about sport, and especially if you're not in sport. And I just say, look, we're in an era where you just have to talk about what you want to talk about. Because if you think about it, they're talking about what they want to talk about, and it's unfair if you're just left out of that discussion. So it's, it's hard to do at the start of your career, don't get me wrong, but to the extent that you have a good relationship with the people that you're talking to, say, look, I don't know anything about this, but I'd quite like to talk about this, and allow men to actually engage in what you want to talk about.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right, Shay. I think that it's important not to be intimidated by those conversations that you don't know, you're just not familiar with. And I'd say, first of all, when you're starting your career, no one's expecting you to know, whether this applies to, outside interests, to casual conversation, and also to technical matters. Just, it's always important to be yourself. Maybe if you attend a meeting and you come out of it and you're completely confused about what just happened, again, be yourself. Just say, I don't know, I'm really confused, do you mind explaining that to me again? And that in itself can be a way to build a relationship with somebody. If you drop them an email afterwards, or maybe you catch them in non-COVID times outside the meeting room, and just say, would it be okay if I put, half an hour in your diary so that we can talk through that again, because I'm really, I don't understand. I think that's also a springboard for building a relationship, and hopefully as well it will give you a better understanding of what you're doing. So I just this is just a slightly more sartorial question. Would you advise, either of you, having a particular style, or styling yourself in a particular way to make you stand out? So, for men, that might be always wearing a really colourful tie, or for women, that might be always, wearing a particular bolder hairstyle, or what would you, or bold socks, or for men, what would you say to that?
I don't know if I'm for the gimmicks. if it's just to be noticed, I think be yourself. So if you are into wearing colorful things, wear that, because you have a reason behind it, right? So it will strike up a conversation. Why do you like wearing red ties all the time? You could say, oh, because, Labour MPs do that so that people trust them, or whatever. You can say whatever it is that you want to say if you really believe in that. Changing hairstyles. I mean, as a Black woman, my hairstyle changes very, very frequently, and people always have something to say about it. Sometimes it means that they would say something positive to me, like I look like Beyonce. I know I don't. Or sometimes it can be a bit uncomfortable, but either way, you do stand out. And I don't think you should do it purposely to be noticed, but if you have something about you that is unique, play up to it. And when people ask, have the confidence to back it up and speak about it.
Thanks, Yvonne. Shay, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, no, Yvonne said it all, but the short answer is be yourself, because it takes too much energy trying to be someone you're not. What I will say though is, it's a hard one, because there's no easy way to answer these kind of questions. But in my line of work, sometimes you're interacting with clients and you want them to remember you, because you want to essentially win work from them, which wins business, and they pay you. And part of that might mean wanting to stand out. Obviously, be yourself. So don't try and stand out if you don't want to. But if, for example, I'm in a room with 100 people and I'm thinking, how am I going to stand out from the crowd? And I have a colorful tie, and I'm like, this might help me stand out. I mean, if it's in a room full of white people, I'm going to stand out anyway, which is often the case. But if not, look, put on a colorful tie, as long as you feel comfortable wearing it. because it might help you stand out. But it's not that that's going to win you business, right? It's what you say and how you go about it. But someone might remember you for your tie. So in which case, use the gimmick to your advantage, but be yourself.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think be yourself, be comfortable. So if putting on a really colourful tie gives you the confidence to speak up and say really really insightful things and contribute to the meeting and the office, then yeah, that's cool. But obviously everything has to be professional. Another theme's coming out of some number of the questions that we're getting through, and that's how to make an impact when you've only got a short amount of time. So whether that's in an interview, or if you're, as we are now, we're in, we're really fluffy on my words there, aren't I? We're working remotely, and we don't have those casual sort of natural interactions and encounters with people. So I guess it's a two-part question. How do you have an impact when you're meeting someone only very briefly, and then how do you maintain that impact over an infrequent kind of seeing people infrequently? Shay, should we start with you this time?
Yeah, to be honest, that's a tough question. In an interview, it comes down to preparation. Typically, it's not always the case, but still, I think most interviews, someone would have a copy of your CV. So knowing your CV and knowing what points you want to draw out, and just being prepared to answer those points in a way that makes you interesting is good for an interview scenario. In a virtual scenario where you're meeting someone for the first time, I think it helps to know who you're meeting in advance and doing a bit of background research on them. If you remember what I said before, people love to talk about their career, their families, and their hobbies, to the extent that you can see their career on LinkedIn. Then you have at least some prerequisite insight, and that might allow you to prepare questions that you could ask them. Also, what I'd say is if you're meeting them for the second time and you've met them before, then remember what they told you the first time. So yeah, and there's no formula for that. I have a spreadsheet where I try and keep tabs on people that I'm meeting, and what I learn about them, I just write some bullet points. This is what the discussion we had was about in very brief notes. This is what I learned about them. And so when I meet them the second time, it just helps me recall what I learned about them before, and then I can start a conversation that builds on what we had spoken about in the past. So those are the little things that help you to stand out. But again, there's no science to this. It really is have a discussion, be yourself, and hopefully you'll stand out naturally.
I'm going to ask you, Shay, am I on your spreadsheet? Because I remember meeting Shay some years ago, and I told him that I was going to, this is all around relationship building as well. I said that I'd met somebody quite influential and that I needed to send them an email, and I didn't know, how I was going to do it. And Shay would often remind me, like every quarter at least, he'd send me a message on LinkedIn saying, did you message that person? So am I on this spreadsheet, Shay, or did the spreadsheet start after that?
No, you just made an impression that made you memorable. So I always remember to ask you. But the spreadsheet, honestly, if I'm being brutally honest, I only started recently because I'm meeting more and more people in my line of work that I do now. But prior to that, you had a mental spreadsheet, but it was very disorganized. So I needed to bring some organization to it. So the spreadsheet is recent.
Okay.
But you were memorable. So, if there was a spreadsheet, you would have been on it.
Awesome.
Keeping literal tabs on people, Shay. Cool. So Yvonne, let's actually, Shay, maybe before we move on, what would you give any advice to so you talked very well about how to make an impact in a short amount of time, but what about building and maintaining that, maybe less so after interview, but if you have that one-off coffee with somebody, how do you ensure that relationship builds? And also I've received a couple of questions as well about how do you achieve that, and how do you build that relationship without feeling like you're imposing on the person you're trying to speak to?
So how do you build a relationship? The short answer is frequency of touch. You need to, once you interact with someone once, you need to look for opportunities to interact with them again. It might not be the next week, it might not be the next month, but try and interact with them at some point in the future. And the more and more you interact with them, the stronger you have the opportunity to build that relationship. So that's the first one. Just remind me what the second part of the question was.
Yeah, just going back there. So I think just to expand on what you said about frequency of contact, just to clarify, that doesn't necessarily have to be a call or face to face. And I guess it includes just sending them an email, a message. And would you put like an upper limit on how long you should go? If you haven't spoken to someone, say in 3 months, should you send them a message? What's the kind of longest you should really go without speaking?
Yeah, again, these are things where there's no science to it. It's a real art. You need to really determine that within yourself, based on the relationship that you initially built. How often do you want to interact with them? Is it someone that you've identified as a potential mentor, in which case you might want to interact with them more often than not, so at least once a quarter? Is it someone who gives you some backpack information, I mean information that you want to chuck into your backpack, and you might want to recall that in 6 months' time when you've come across something that's relevant to what they said? There is no science to it, so it's a hard question to answer. But what I will say is using my spreadsheet tool that I mentioned before. Use that to give you some guidance. So set some deadlines as to when the person who you've interacted with, when you would like to interact with them again. So on my spreadsheet, I have people that I have high touch frequency, medium touch, low touch. So high touch frequency are people who I want to have a continuous relation with, who I want to at least meet once a quarter. Medium touch are people who have said something that might be relevant to me or is relevant to me, but I want to interact with them when I've progressed with something. So if for example, they said something that has a regulatory impact, but that regulation hasn't been put in place yet, then I might interact with them after the regulation has been put in place. And then low touch is more, okay, I know this person, I've interacted with them, this is what I can remember, but I'm not necessarily going to pursue that. I'm not necessarily going to re-engage with them unless it happens maybe more naturally. So yeah, you got to set that and define that for yourself.
Cool. And I guess that ties into the other part of the question, which is how do you build that relationship without imposing on their time?
Yeah.
And I guess that sort of identifying up front and maybe establishing with the person you're speaking, if you meet somebody who you want to sort of build a relationship, you kind of establish in that initial meeting, you say, will it be okay if I, put another meeting in say a couple of weeks, a month, or, and I think a lot of, certainly in my experience, if people are busy, they tell you they're busy, and it's not something to be offended about. Offended by. It's completely natural, and you don't want to be sort of hounding them. So yeah, just they'll give indication as well, I suspect.
Yeah, I wonder if I mean, you've answered the question beautifully, but I wonder if underpinning that question is a fear of I don't want to impose myself on someone. And what I'd say to that is, like you said, people will tell you when and if they're busy, and the worst anyone can say to you is no, in which case you just keep it moving. And so I wouldn't be fearful about imposing myself on someone's time. Just go for it and see what their reaction is, and then adjust based on their response.
Yeah, cool. Thanks very much, Shay. I realised it was quite a loaded question. It's become 3 questions now, but Yvonne, I guess it's over to you. So to recap, I think the topics that we're kind of covering at this point are: how do you make an impact kind of when you've only got a very short amount of time. So this is like the classic elevator pitch or so-called elevator pitch, the interview, you know, how can you make an impact? And then in a sort of similar vein of having a short amount of time or not having constant interaction, how do you build that relationship through infrequent meetings? And then I guess the last point we were talking about is what's a good level of frequency, and how do you gauge kind of without imposing on people? Sorry for the hugeness of this question.
I might need you to recap halfway through.
That's fine.
So let's go for it. So for the first one, in terms of interviews, one of the things that I'm aware of through practice is that I can go into at least the first round interview and ace it. Why? Because of what Shay said. The first thing is preparation. Know your stuff, and that automatically gives you a level of confidence. And when I say know your stuff, I mean know your CV, know what you can and can't do, and then know the job that you've gone for. That way, if anybody asks you a question, you're able to just respond there and then. However, the other thing is I sort of take on an alter ego that is a very smiley, witty, and polite person. So when I meet people at interview stage, I'll make jokes. I'll talk about, you know, the weather. I'll talk about something I've read on the news that day. If anybody says anything remotely that I can relate to, the area that they live in, or they say something about being Scottish, or, you know, anything, I pounce on that and I start talking about it. And that way, and then the overarching thing is that I've gone into this interview as if it's a conversation, especially the first round. It's a conversation. You're getting to know me and I'm getting to know you. And if I know that I've gone in with the aim that I want you to know me, you're going to know me before I leave, and you won't forget. That's the first round. After that, it gets a bit, you know, shaky. So in the interview stage, I'd say that's it. Just try to build a connection with the person that's interviewing you. Don't seek to just answer the questions or seek to go there, I need this job. Seek to build a connection with the person who's interviewing, because what usually happens is after the interview, they'll go and tell about 3 or 4 other people who might be in your next stage, I've met this person, they're really cool to work with. And that's what they're looking at. And then they start doing more technical interviews and that kind of thing. So that's my tip for interviews and short spaces of time. In terms of an elevator pitch, I'm still working on that myself. So I would say use your resources, because that's what I'm going to do. YouTube, you know, we don't have the opportunity to be in the elevator now. We haven't done so for the last 17 months. So I haven't perfected the one for this role, but YouTube, you know, Google, try and think of ways in which you can get your 90-second pitch perfect. In the past, I used to say things like, you know, my name is Yvonne and I work with pension schemes to build solutions and make sure that their money grows beyond the next 20 years. That's, to me, I don't think that sounds amazing, but I've told you what I do and I've told you my name. So I'm still working on it, but it's something like that, something punchy, what you do and what your mission is, not just generally, I work at this company and I've been here for so years. So I'd say work on that. The next thing you asked me was, the last thing you asked me is about the frequency of contact. So I heard a story.
Sorry, I'll just say that sort of ties into the middle one, so you can cover them both, but it's kind of, how do you maintain that relationship when you're only meeting someone infrequently?
Okay, awesome. I think it's to steal a bit of the spreadsheet idea that Shay has had, is to sort of remind yourself about those people and to give yourself a mental note to keep in touch. So these aren't people who you'll be seeing on a social basis. So they're not, you know, waiting by the phone thinking, why hasn't Yvonne contacted me? But it will be nice to hear from you at some point. So even if it's every 6 months or every 3 months, make sure you drop them a message to see how they are. And as Shay said, people like talking about themselves. So you're asking how they are, but maybe try and find a way to weave in your current position and asking for some advice. You know, I'm in a new role where I'm a portfolio manager and I'm handling lots more money now. How do you stay focused, and how do you think of new products to push to that kind of audience? You know, if that's a kind of, whatever relationship you have with them, think of a question that you can ask in that email so that they have to respond, not just the, hey, I'm here and I'm still alive. They need to respond to you. So have a question in there. But in terms of frequency, I heard a story from one of my mentors. So if you know, everyone who's in the webinar is familiar with Talk About Black, you will know Dawid Konate Ahulu. And I remember he mentioned a story about a guy who wanted to get in contact with somebody. And every time the person sent an email to let's call them a mentor, to the prospective mentor, the mentor would say that they're too busy. Can you contact me in 3 months? And the person would say, okay, sure, have a great day. In 3 months exactly, they would contact the person. And the person might say again, can you contact me? You know, I'm quite busy now. Can you contact me in another 3 months? Sure, no problem. Great speaking to you. 3 months. And then the mentor started to realize how consistent this person was. So they don't know them, they haven't had a conversation yet, but that person's already built a reputation of how consistent they can be. And it's about the understanding people are busy. So as I've grown in my career, I've realized that sometimes I get messages on LinkedIn. Please do follow me on LinkedIn and, you know, message me and things like that. I will definitely get back to you. But if at times when you're really busy, it gets super overwhelming and you look at the questions that people have asked you and you want to give them a really solid answer, because it's not that long ago, and I'm even still in that position, where you send emails, messages to people and you want them to respond and, you know, give you something really juicy to work on. And I'm thinking, okay, I need to think of something juicy, or I need to think of somewhere great to refer them to. And I might not get back to you straight away, but it's because I'm thinking about how to respond, not because I'm thinking, oh, this person's annoying, I'm not going to get back to them. So people genuinely get busy, and just understand that. And when you, and take away that feeling of I'm nagging this person, unless you know that you are definitely nagging and being a little bit disrespectful in your messages. Just take that feeling away and just give yourself maybe 2 weeks and message them, you know, how are you? How's your week been? Just wanted to see if you've, you know, had a chance to look at my message. 9 times out of 10, the person will probably say, oh, I'm really sorry, I've been quite busy and haven't been able to get back to you. I'll do so next time, or they'll do it there and then. You know, just take away that feeling of awkwardness. I do get some people who message me who are quite overly familiar, and I have to be honest, that makes it quite difficult to respond, because I don't know you and I don't know how to be familiar back. So sometimes that can, you know, you can easily rub somebody the wrong way. I'll give you an example of the message. You know, hi Yvonne, I heard you work at Elgin. What's it, you know, how are you getting on there? And it's just kind of like, I mean, I don't really know what to say to you. I don't know what you're looking for. I don't know what you need from me. A better way to put it might be, you know, hi Yvonne, you know, I've seen that you work at Elgin. How long have you, you know, how long have you worked there? And what interests you about working there? Because I'm interested. Okay, fair enough. Now I know what you're talking about. How are you getting on there? It sounds like maybe you want to give me something, but I don't know you, so I don't know what you're offering. Yeah. So I'd say, yeah, that in terms of consistency of contact and being mindful of that people will be busy, but don't let that sort of deter you from contacting them.
I really like that point actually of not sending open-ended questions, because there's that 2-minute rule, or isn't it, maybe it's a 30-second rule, but you know, I think most people when they're looking through their inbox, you know, they kind of try, you know, you kind of, your brain does a kind of, right, what can I answer in kind of 30 seconds, a minute and a half, and then what's the stuff that's going to take some real time thinking, and that's the stuff that you kind of, I don't know, I you know, you get to it, but it's usually like at Christmas where it's really quiet. You've done all the other 1-minute jobs, but you know, so I'd say if you say to someone, if you know, if you took Yvonne's example and you said to somebody, you know, how are you doing? Just like really open-ended, that's going to need quite a lot of thought of, you know, as am I right thinking, Yvonne, you kind of interpretation, and you don't know how to respond. Whereas if you would, you know, if you would say how long do you work there, you know, the other questions that, you know, the specific questions that Yvonne mentioned, you know, you could ask, that's much more likely to elicit a response, because someone can see that, understand exactly what you're after, and answer concretely, really, with concrete answers. And I'd save the sort of slightly broader open-ended questions for an in-person conversation, I think, where you can kind of, you know, you can clarify a bit more easily. So yeah, so I think when you are reaching out to somebody, asking, you know, specific questions is really important. So we've got one, just kind of on that note, we've had one quite considerate question from one of our attendees saying, when networking and building relationships with people further on in their career than you are, given that you're asking them for guidance, what can you offer in return? Especially if you were just starting out in your career and don't have much experience. This is where, you know, you've overcome the fear of disturbing them, of, you know, imposing on their time. You know, you finally got that meeting with them. you know, how can you say thank you? What can you do in return? Yvonne?
Yeah, sure. So I guess you seeing me here speaking to you is a product of that. I met two people that I thought would be great mentors. And after our first meeting, I offered my time. And because of that, I got involved in speaking on a panel. After speaking on a panel, I just sort of said, I'm happy to share my experience as you need, or I'm happy to give you a hand. So after speaking on a panel, I then got asked to work on a few events. This is all Talk About Black, to work on a few events. So I worked on some of the events. And then I was spoken to and said, and after that, it became like a more of a give and take. So I'd like to speak to you about this issue that I'm having at work. So we'd have a conversation about that. And then I'd have an email. Yvonne, we're working on mentoring circles. Do you want to be involved in mentoring circles? Here I am. I'm working on mentoring circles. And it just grew and grew and grew. And now, you know, it's to the point where we share WhatsApps. It's no longer LinkedIn messages or emails. It's more WhatsApps. And you know, even then still having to get over the fear of messaging someone on a Saturday. But it's the fact is you can do that. And that's from building up from somewhere. So I'd say the main thing you do is offer your time and offer your skills and your experiences. Obviously that's on a diversity perspective. If it's something that's more technical at work, I'd say the same thing. Just make sure the person is aware that you're interested in whatever area they're in. Ask them about what they might be working on the side, and if they need any assistance with that, you'd be very happy. But that's where the give and take is, because there probably isn't much you can give in way of your own advice to them unless they're looking for it, but your time and your skills, definitely.
Shay, how about you?
Yeah, great answer, Yvonne. Look, the truth is, and I'm reading into the question maybe a bit too much, so forgive me, but when you first ask, you might not know straight away what you can offer in return. And I think that's where the fear creeps in, and that's why they're asking the question. There's that trepidation, like, what am I going to give back to this person? And that's okay. You ask really to receive at first, and then you give back after, when you found maybe something that you can. And like everyone said, you can give your time. Another thing you can give quite easily is your perspective, right? So as you're discussing whatever it is you're discussing, offer your opinion on whatever the topic is that you're talking about. And you'll be surprised, like, how many people, especially people older than you, want to hear your perspective on something. In my line of work, pensions, I really want to hear the perspective of the younger generation, because as we get older, or as time progresses, we need to know how to communicate, how to influence, how to engage with a younger demographic. And so your perspective matters, and you can always offer your time, you can always offer your perspective. Aside from that, again, it depends on you know, the reason why you've reached out to them, what you're discussing, and you can progress it from there.
Yeah, I think I'd agree with all of those. I think one thing I would add though is, which I'm sure goes without saying, but you know, if someone does take the time to speak to you or they reply to your email, you know, it's just saying thank you. You know, thank you for your time, or thank you for getting back to me. You know, it's just a small little word, but I think that can go down quite well. And then, you know, if you haven't grasped exactly what, you know, how you can help them or what you can do specifically, just say, you know, if you ever need my help, just get in touch. You know, I appreciate you taking the time. You know, I'd really like to repay you in some way. So if I can help with anything, just give me a shout. That kind of thing is kind of would be good. Right. So I think now we covered quite some quite positive sides of building relationships, but I think we can't neglect sort of the slightly more difficult, like political in the sort of office sense aspects. So what advice would you give or to somebody who is struggling to build relationships and they feel that it's because someone in their team, either a peer or a senior, is trying to restrict them in some way. They restrict you in some way. So, you know, they're not allowing you access. They're not introducing you to people. They're maybe sort of downplaying the quality of your work. How can you navigate building relationships when the people immediately around you are discouraging it? Shay, should we start with you this time?
Yeah. So I'm going to sound like a broken record, but it's not a science. It's going to be case by case specific. So what I will say is find someone else outside of your team to talk to about the situation, to offer an external perspective. That might be a mentor, it might be a friend at work, it might be a friend outside work. Just find someone else, talk to someone else about the situation and get their insight. The second thing is, maybe I tell a quick story here. So I had a friend whose boss was like just a very, very challenging person. He was very condescending and he didn't treat my friend very well. And when it was his boss's birthday, what he done was he brought him a tie. And what he was trying to do there was he was trying to retaliate with kindness. He was trying to kill his boss with kindness. And it frazzled his boss, right? Because his boss kind of knew that he was being a difficult person. And no one else gave him a present for his birthday. So he's like, why, you know, in his head, I mean, he probably didn't say it, but he's like, why are you doing this? And then that became, it took him off piece a bit. Like it became a window to start to rebuild a relationship. And my friend was able to turn that relationship around into a positive working relationship. So kill people with kindness. So talk to someone, kill someone with kindness. And if people continue being difficult, the truth is, in this day and age, if people stand in your way, you just have to keep them at arm's length. Hopefully it's someone who's not in your sphere of influence, i.e. like a line manager or someone in your team that is more senior than you. If they're not in your team, just keep them at arm's length, because at the end of the day, it's energy trying to work with people that are being difficult, especially if there is no valid reason behind it. If they are in your team, if they are your line manager, again, this is why it's important to build relationships outside your team. They're not the only people that have influence over you. There are other people in the organization too. Finally, look, if it's a case where there's no way around it and it is someone like a line manager, you just have to find value in yourself and leave them, whether that's move internally or leave the organization. Because at the end of the day, using this example of your line manager, that they are, you really do need them to play a role in your development. And if they're not doing that, then unfortunately, it's maybe time to cut ties with them. And that is actually one of the main reasons why people leave their jobs. Either they don't like their line manager, they don't like their role, or they've come to the end of their learning experience in their role, or money. And two of those should be controllable by an organization. Sometimes you can't determine how much money you can pay someone because it's fixed depending on budget, but you can decide how you treat people. And if people aren't treating you right, sorry, they deserve to be cancelled.
Thanks, Shay. Everyone, what would you say to that, navigating difficult relationships?
So this is the time I can see that, you know, with 20 minutes to go, we're about to get very, very real. And I will tell you a bit about my own experience so far. So please, you know, send a message in the chat if you relate to this, because I know that a lot of people here may be doing internships or going into internships or, you know, very early on in their career. So send a message in the chat if you relate to any of this. But I was in a role where my the head of our team, so it wasn't my line manager, but the head of our team was somebody who was extremely difficult to deal with. And what was happening was that all the other people around him, so my line manager changed twice, all of my line managers and everyone else was afraid of this guy. They wanted to be in this guy's good books. So if this guy said that that person in that team, in our team, is a no, everyone else said that they were a no. So I tried what Shay said. You know, I built relationships outside of my team. And I would have people outside of my team saying, Yvonne is outstanding. She's really good at her job. She's operating 2 levels above where she is now. And I'd, you know, go to my team and have a catch up, and they'll say, you're underperforming versus everyone else. And I'd be looking at the 2 pieces of paper in front of me, and I'd think, where's this coming from? Because why is this person saying, not just saying that I'm amazing, but more than amazing, and you're telling me I'm below average? At least let's meet in the middle somewhere. I had people telling me that, you know, external people in our team, you know, who sat with us saying, you are being bullied. This is what's happening. You are actually being bullied in this team. And so how did I solve that solution? I left. I just left, because that person had such a level of influence that even now they're even more further beyond where they were. Because if you were a yes, you were flying high in that company. If you were a no, you've left. Anybody who was a no has left. But I've left and I'm thriving elsewhere. So what I've learned since then is that you should make notes of every single scenario where you feel marginalized or that somebody has said something wrong to you. Make notes of the event, the day, the time, the context, anybody else who was around, and keep a log. Because what you can then do with that is actually have a very grown-up, mature conversation with their boss or with somebody who's a level above them. Because what you can't do is have a conversation with somebody saying, XYZ is being mean to me, and I don't know how to manage it, because nobody's going to listen to you. They all see it, but nobody's going to listen to you. But as long as something is in writing, trust me, people will run and they will get involved. They will very much get involved. So I would say keep a log of everything. And this is in relation to this difficult relationship thing, because what you can't do is keep running. At some point, you're going to have to learn how to deal with conflict, and they'll come at different levels. And when it comes at the highest point, it's the most challenging, because who are you to go and stand in front of your boss and say, you are managing me the wrong way? But there are people who are made to be managers and the people who are not. People are given managers as a title, but doesn't mean they actually know how to manage people. And that's not your problem. So you just have to do what's in your control. Take notes about what's happening, do the best that you can do at your job, and then seek help where you need to seek help. Those employee assistance lines are there as well for you to call and speak to people. They offer you more emotional, because I used one of those. They offered me more emotional help and things like that. But what it then tells you is it confirms to you that these people are mad and they want to kill me. So I'm not going to stay around this. I need to leave. But make notes and yeah, follow up.
Thanks, Yvonne, and thanks for being so open and sharing your story there. I think it's important to get these kinds of things out, and yeah, to let people know that it's, you know, there are ways out of it. You know, you can speak to people, and you know, I think the point you made there about making a log so that you can go to someone and have that mature conversation, saying, look, you know, these are the incidents that I can recall. You know, these are tangible instances. You know, they can't lie with that. Cool. Maybe on a related, this is slightly a related question. How can you tell when a relationship isn't working? What are there warning signs, or are there any signs that you should you can find that the relationship isn't working? And then how can you kind of politely, like if you're meeting someone frequently, but you're not really getting anything out of it, have you ever had to kind of get out of that relationship politely? It's cool if you haven't. I can give an example when.
Please do give your example, because mine has not been as mature. There's been instances where I just ghost people. I don't message them again, or for their time again. I mean, it's only happened once. Then there's been another occasion where this is a professional relationship where I had to I just told the person I'm not happy with the way that we're interacting, and it took a lot out of me to do, a lot of preparation, a lot of like, you know, rehearsing what I was going to say. But you know, it felt very liberating to tell the person I don't think that we're interacting in the right way. It's not useful to me, and I would like this to end.
I think
And
that's really good.
but
I think you know, I think I can predict what Shay's going to say. It's not an art. It's not a science. It's an art.
You know me too well.
But I guess maybe the point around this is just, you know, if you feel that relationship isn't working, don't force yourself to continue it, you know, because the other person might be feeling the same, and it's a drain on your energy. It will probably be a source of anxiety and worry as the, you know, potentially recurring appointment arises or approaches. I think to Yvonne's point, you know, it's perfectly fine to just say, look, you know, I really appreciated your time. You know, why don't we reduce the frequency of these, or, you know, maybe this is, you know, I don't think that there's much more we can do here. It's not working for me. And, you know, I guess you could always speak to other people in your organization, but I think it's key that if you feel that relationship isn't working, that you don't feel trapped in it. Shay, sorry.
Yeah, no, I agreed. On a practical level, from what I've observed, it might be different case by case again, but on a practical level, in the laws of the jungle of finance, corporate work is, it's incumbent on the person seeking advice to set up the meetings, to pursue the relationship, as sad as it is, but that's sort of how the game goes. And look, you know, Yvonne said she ghosts people. In fairness, I don't think that's a bad technique. If it's not working, just don't set up another meeting.
that's what I meant. I didn't mean that people message me and I ignore them. But yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, so that's it.
Yeah, so yeah, okay, fair. But yeah, look, if it's incumbent on you to take the initiative to progress things and it's not working, just stop, because it's not working. And like Saskia said, they would probably, hopefully on their side as well, know that, and so they wouldn't pursue either. And if they did, then, you know, you might meet again, but it would naturally just run its course, and both sides would know, and you won't necessarily have to explain why that is. People are busy; they'll just find something else to do.
Cool, thanks very much. I've got a slightly lighter question on a slightly lighter note now. I'm conscious we've got 50 minutes left to go, actually. So if anyone does have any questions that they want to get in, time's ticking, so make sure you get them in the chat or in the Q&A in the next few minutes so that we can get to them. But a lighter one that I've received is, do you think you can make friends in the workplace, or do you believe business and social should never mix? Shay?
So do you believe business and social should never mix? I wouldn't say they should never mix, but I will say that they rarely do. So can you make friends in the workplace? Yes, absolutely. There are different types of friends, and I guess we have to contextualize what one means by friends. Subjective, right? You have situational friends that are, you know, there might be people at your universities that are friends while you're at university. As soon as you leave the university, bye-bye to your friendship. They're situational friends. They're your friends because of the situation that you're in. You have family friends that you bring around your family. You have acquaintances, people who are not quite friends, but, you know, you're cordial with, and you have your inner circle of friends. So if we're defining the question as, do you think you can make friends, i.e. inner circle friends, family friends, with people in your workplace, then I wouldn't say never, but I would say it's rare. But if you think about what a friend is, you know, a friend is someone who's there for you in your time of need. A friend is someone who you converse with outside of work. Yeah, you can have those relationships at work. I've worked at 4 companies now, and I would say from each company, I have one person, at least one person, who I would consider a friend. But all those relationships have been built organically and authentically. I haven't had to be someone, I'm not around them. We just naturally built a good rapport and they became friends, as any one of my friends or your friends have become friends in the past. If you think about friends you have now, do you have to force a relationship with them? No, they they just naturally become your friend. So if you naturally build a relationship with someone and they work with you, fine, let it naturally grow and let them become friends. Having said that, though, you do need to be mindful of the boundaries between work and business and pleasure, work and not work. So yeah, you just have to be careful at first, but if it grows organically, fine.
So I'd say that's very true. But one thing that I wanted to just mention is one of the things that I grew up learning from my mum was that you do not make friends at work. Work is for work and it's not for friendships. And, you know, bless my mum, it's true in respect of keeping boundaries. But I think that you can actually make friends in the workplace. What I'd say is that it needs to be mutual. So, you know, find somebody who you do relate to and can have that organic relationship. Because what I found is allowing myself to open up about that. I wasn't so open at first, especially around that time where, you know, I was being quote unquote bullied in this team and so on and so forth. But after coming out of that and realizing that I could meet people who were almost like me, you know, new in their career, but, you know, have gone through certain things and are now feeling a lot happier in the career path that they're in, we've established a common ground. And as they've moved in different places, they have become key relationships in different companies. They've also, you know, even in one of my jobs, I had friends who were managers, and that meant I could speak to them about confidential things I wanted to speak to my manager about because they were my friend, and they could tell me, how can this be handled by a manager in this company? So it's that different perspective and that trust that you can build with somebody to find out that, you know, if I ask my manager for 10 weeks of holiday to go to Ghana, he can say yes or he can say no. Why can he say yes? Because of these things in the directive. Why can he say no? Or, you know, don't ask your manager that, because that's going to put them in a very awkward position, and that will hinder your relationship with your manager. You know, that's the kind of conversations that we were having because they had that knowledge, and because I was able to build a relationship with them and trust them. So I'd say take out from your mind the no friends at work policy, but 100% keep your boundaries in place and make sure that it's mutual. Because I've had some people who have been trying to make friends with me, but I was not their friend. That doesn't mean that I would, you know, go and spill all their secrets, but, you know, it was quite uncomfortable because it's very difficult to say to the person, I don't really like you as much as you like me, stop telling me your life story. But I wouldn't, you know, it would make me feel uncomfortable to do that to somebody else. So I would say, make sure that you're aware of how mutual the relationship is.
Cool, thank you. Cool, we've had a couple more questions come in. Where should you look for a mentor? Where would you recommend looking for a mentor?
Everywhere. Come to sessions like these, when in person, when different events are happening based on topics that you're interested in, go to them and make that impression. Think about what your elevator pitch is, or think about what it is that you can do to make an impression on somebody. Is it your smile? Is it something that you remember from what they've spoken about that you can then relate to them on? And then just ask them, do you mind having, you can start with 15 minutes. Do you mind having a 15-minute conversation? If they say, yeah, bingo, you're in there. Have the 15-minute conversation and make sure it's 15 minutes. And at the end of that, say, it would be great if we could speak again. Because sometimes if it's not an actual mentoring program, you can't get someone to commit to be your mentor. But if you can accept that you can have regular meetings with somebody that you just keep arranging, then you've got somebody who knows about you and knows your history and knows things that you've spoken about, who you can continue talking to. And that isn't a mentor. It just hasn't got a title. During that conversation, you can then say to the person, can you be my mentor? And they'll let you know if they have time to do that. And if they don't, just don't let that hinder you. Remember, everyone's busy, everyone's got a day job. Just keep on that, that path, speak to people and just continue conversations with them, make an impact, and ask them, can you be my mentor? Do you mind if I have another meeting with you?
Thanks, everyone. Shay, what would you have to say to that?
Yeah, hit the nail on the head. Where do you find your mentor, or where do you look for a mentor? Everywhere. You don't go to mentor.com to find a mentor. Yeah, you just focus on like I said before, what is in your hands. My first mentor was a guy who I met at a university event, the guy that I was talking about that went to Loughborough University, the university I was at, but worked at Morgan Stanley. And I met him at an event. What I will say is that at the start of my career, I used to ask people, can you be my mentor? And some of them said yes, don't get me wrong, but over time, it just wasn't really an authentic relationship. It just felt like I couldn't be my full self and I was putting too much effort, or in some respects, it was my fault. Like I felt like I couldn't go back to them unless I had action some of the things that we'd spoken about at our last meeting. And yeah, it just wasn't a natural fit. And what I realized was actually I'm going to stop asking people to be my mentor, and people will naturally become your mentor because, well, it might not be natural, but remember what I gave earlier for those of you that been on the call long enough to listen to my annoying voice, but a mentors advise you, they help you navigate your career, they coach you through opportunities, they talk with you. They don't necessarily have to have that title immediately. So people might naturally already be coaching you through your career just because you've sought them out and you've asked them questions. People might naturally be talking to you about your career. And then over time, as they're doing that organically, you ask them, can we formalize this through a mentor-mentee relationship? But you look for them everywhere. So to answer your question.
Yeah, I agree with both of those. I'd say looking everywhere is absolutely right. But for kind of, if anyone's looking for kind of like a focused sort of search or sort of hunting ground, for want of a better term, if you've had anyone you've met in the industry, whether that's on an internship, an insight day, at an interview, this is a question we've got through actually, that even if you didn't get the job, but you met someone at an interview who you really liked, do not let that stop you from sending them a message on LinkedIn. If you've got their email address, send them an email. If it was through a recruiter, asking the recruiter saying, look, I really got on with this guy. I know I didn't get the job, or this woman, I'd quite like to contact them, and then just send them an email and say, really enjoyed meeting you the other day or the other month or whatever. I fully appreciate that I wasn't suitable for the job. But I'd like to stay in touch. I'd like to hear more about what you do. Maybe if you can pick up on something in particular they said in the interview that really inspired you, draw on that and say, I was particularly interested when, in, I don't know, the way you described your approach to fixed income investing and interest rate predictions. I don't know. So yeah, don't be afraid. Just, send an email that's concise, or a LinkedIn message that's concise and to the point. And just say that you enjoyed meeting them and, would like to stay in touch, essentially.
Can I just quickly say, sorry,
Yeah.
just to chime in, I think it is beneficial to have a physical mentor, but mentors don't always have to be people that you see. One of my mentors is Carla Harris. She's a senior employee at Morgan Stanley and lives out in the States. I've never met her, never had a coffee with her. I've seen her speak at a conference, but apart from that, but she's my mentor. She doesn't know it, but she is, because I learn from her. And something she said that will always stick with me is, when you're working, there are two currencies for success. You need a relationship currency, which is your engagement with others, the currency you obtain from investing in people that in your working environment, all the stuff we're talking about today. But you also need performance currency, and that's the currency you get from delivering what is asked of you and more, the currency you get for doing a good job. It's the performance currency and the relationship currency combined that attract sponsorship, that attract pay and promotion, that create your reputation. You need both. Mentors are essentially people that you learn from, and they don't always have to be in front of your face, or they don't always have to be tangible or across the coffee table.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I think COVID, or the remote working situation has given everyone an opportunity to put 15 minutes in people's diaries for a quick call, and it's kind of leveled the playing field of reaching colleagues in other countries as well. And then the other thing, Shay, you took the words out of my mouth, I want to say is that a mentor doesn't have to be strictly by name a mentor. I'm not sure I've ever really sort of said to somebody, well, not like maybe one or two people I've said, oh, mentor, or use the term mentor, but otherwise I've never really used that term. I've just, said, oh, do you mind if I put another coffee? Can we do this quite regularly? I'd love to chat with you some more, and that kind of thing. And I think, don't be intimidated by the term mentor. It's as much a function as a title. And just if you're feeling that you're getting a vibe from somebody and you're clicking with them, and you feel that there's you're learning from them, then they are a mentor in all but name. And I'd say just continue that. Don't get hung up on the fact that you've not said the word mentor or anything like that. Cool. 3 minutes to go. I'm going to hand the mic over to Yvonne and Shay. Are there any closing comments, or what's the number one takeaway that you would like people to take from this session about building relationships and increasing visibility?
I guess I'll go.
Alternative question, because I know that slightly put you on the spot. Can you talk about the most influential relationship that you've built in your career?
Oh, okay. I feel like that's even harder.
All right, it's up to you. It's up to you.
Okay, so the tip side, I would say, building relationships with people is 100% going to be awkward, but it's also going to be extremely fulfilling and a key learning experience for your career. It's the way that you'll find out about the unwritten rules in the office. You'll find out about the ways other people have navigated situations. And also it will make your time at work a lot more enjoyable, because you will be spending hours and hours of your day in an office environment, or now remotely, working with these people. And you're not supposed to go there laboring. You're supposed to enjoy what you do and enjoy the people you're doing it with. I guess one of the most influential relationships I have is with somebody who is probably, I think, about 6 or 7 years my senior. And it's influential because I can be very open about, about things that I'm going through. I can ask questions from their experience bank, because they've got a similar background to me. And also I can take their advice. I would say somebody that you can't take the advice of is probably not a good mentor for you, because every time they speak, you'll just be thinking, when is this going to end? When is this going to end? And when can I have my ear back? You want somebody that you're able to listen to and that you're able to respect as well. So.
Thank you. And Shay, do you want to?
Yeah, I'll start with the second question. So probably a key relationship for me was the person that introduced me to pensions, which is the industry I work in now. And the way that relationship started was, he was actually mentoring a friend of mine, and a friend said, you might want to get to know this guy. He's pretty cool, got an interesting story, and his wife is Nigerian. So he's a white male, and he's got a Nigerian wife. I'm Nigerian, and so my friend put us in contact with one another. At that time, I was working in operations in banking and then in private equity, and I was getting itchy feet. I wanted to do something a bit more client-facing. I wanted to be in front of clients, and when my friend put me in touch with this guy, we had breakfast, and all we did was talk about Nigeria, because his wife is Nigerian, and the Nigerian heritage and the culture. And coincidentally, this was a Monday morning, coincidentally, the same week on the Thursday, I bumped into him again in the city. And he said, I forgot to ask you on Monday, but are you happy in your job? I didn't want to tell him I'm unhappy in my job, but I just told him, look, I want to do something a bit more client facing. And he just said, okay, send me your CV. And I did. And he got me an interview at the company I worked with prior to the company that I joined now. And he became a key relationship, because he introduced me to pensions, and we also maintained a good if you like, mentee-mentor relationship, even though I've never called him an official mentor. We've never sort of defined our relationship in that sense. He's someone who I seek regularly for advice. He's someone who champions my career development, and he essentially opened the door to what I do now. If not for him, I wouldn't be where I am. And that goes into the second point about key takeaway for today. Look, we need people. I said it before, education is a progressive revelation of your ignorance. We are all ignorant. We all have gaps in our knowledge. We all need people to help open doors and support our development. And I said it again earlier on the call, but our ability to progress is a function of someone's judgment, or can be a function of someone's judgment. And the way to influence someone's judgment is through the relationships you have. So one of the key takeaways I want you guys to have is just know that relationships are powerful, and seek to build good, solid working relationships, personal relationships with the people that you can.
Wonderful. Thank you both. I'm conscious we've gone 3 minutes early, apologies for keeping everybody, but huge thanks to everyone. All I think at one point we had 60 odd for dialing in today, and of course huge thanks to Yvonne and Shay for their time and for sharing such insightful knowledge and insights, really. So yeah, feel free to reach out to me, or I'm sure any of us on LinkedIn if you've got any follow-up questions. And yeah, sign up for the rest of these series, the rest of these sessions. You know, there will be a different topic every month, different hosts, so you won't just have me, different mentors, different perspectives. So yeah, thank you again for joining, and have a good night, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. If you're looking for us on LinkedIn, you should be able to get it through our 4 names.
Yeah, search my name.
On the screen or on the posters. So someone just said that question in the chat. Thank
Just
you.
answering what the question on books and courses about this. I don't really know. Do you know any? Just Google maybe.
YouTube.
Yeah.
I look at YouTube for everything. How do I answer this question? How do I show up at an interview? I love YouTube. Rabbit hole, but it's
Cool. Oh, recording.